Today's topic in Lakes 101 is fishing in the wind. Now, wind is a major factor if you fish lakes. It's much more so than if you fish streams, and there's a simple reason why. If you fish streams tend to be narrow, twisting. Usually the stream or the river has carved a course or a channel with either hillsides for walls or a canyon, and all of these things deflect the wind. Typically there may be a few stretches on the river where you face full force of the wind, but most of the river is going to be sheltered. In a lake, it's wide open. If you look behind me, it's just an expanse of water. The wind hits it unimpeded and jets all the way across its surface. So typically you're going to have to deal with wind fishing lakes more than you ever had on streams. Okay, because of that, my anchor, becomes a piece of critical equipment. And the reason is, if you don't have this, then you can pretty much only troll. So it really limits your fishing options. So let's talk about how we set things up, how we set up our boat, how we set up our float tube. Now, it's kind of critical to always have your anchor point, the last place it touches on your raft or float tube, boat, be behind you. That way, so when you set your anchor, what typically happens is your boat will weather vane with the wind and orient you in the direction that you want to cast, which is downwind. Today's first tip, and this one's critical, do not fight the wind. The wind will win every time. Trying to fight it will just be frustrating. It'll impact your fishing. You'll have a poor day. Instead, try and work with the wind. And if possible, try and have the wind work for you. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you decide where you're going to fish, anchor up so that it's downwind of you. Then your boat will orient so that you are facing that direction. And when you cast, it's downwind and the wind is actually helping you. When your line gets out there and say you've got a strike indicator on and you've got a nymph underneath, your line will go to the end and it'll sit there stationary, other than the bounce from the chop on the water. That works for you. So again, this is important enough, I'm going to repeat it. Do not try to fight the wind. Work with the wind, and if possible, have the wind work for you. And believe me, it is possible with a little bit of forethought. Now we'll go into some of the techniques to use when you're fishing lakes in the wind, which is going to be 90-95% of the time. You'll have to deal with it sometime. All right. Now let's go see if we can find some fish. Here I'm fishing a hare's ear under a hopper dropper. The reason is the wind is blowing hoppers in from the grassy banks and insects in from the trees. And there's a small Callibaetis hatch going on. Now notice, I've casted directly towards shore, but in short order, the action of the wind and the waves is put bow in my line. Now, if I mend to my right, there's a chance that I can extend this cast down the bank. If I hold fast to my line, the wind is going to sweep it in an arc until the line comes to rest directly downwind. Now, if I make a cast to the left, and I also hold tight to the line will again weather vane back to the wind line. In doing so, I can effectively fish a whole range of water as my fly sweeps through. Now, this is especially effective if you're fishing a balanced leech. Then the action of the waves bobbing up and down on your indicator moves the balanced leech up and down, getting that tail to work, while at the same time, the tightening of your line in the wind slowly sweeps it in an arc back to the center line. I had better luck closer to shore. Further.
One of the complications of casting in wind. I'm trying to get to the shore and the wind is drifting it out. There was a fish on the, about to say, I only got the one on the hare's ear, and that was the end of that game. Now this looks like a big boy from that wallow that he made in the shallows there. You have to remember that that hare's ear is hanging off a 4X. So one on the hopper, one on the dropper. Oh, it's a pretty fish. I'm pretty strong when he wants to be. Whoa. This is going to be another one that's going to test the net. My net that's falling apart. Oh. Oh, he's gone down. Come on up. I don't want you wrapping me off on something down there. Oh. Okay, so this is one place. This is an 11-foot 3-weight. I throw a 4-weight on it, and it handles it great. One advantage when you're fighting something like this and you've got like a finer tippet on is it's a great shock absorber. A stiffer rod might be a problem with a fish like this. This guy is over 20 for sure. Oh, he's not done though, I can tell. He kind of gave me the side eye like he was thinking about letting me bring him in, and oh, look how thick he is across the back. Oh my God. Oh man. This is going to be another one that challenges the net. He's going to have like part of his body sticking out. Holy cow. Oh. Holy moly. Come on. Cut me some slack here. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh. Oh shit. Oh. Yeah, I don't think this thing will float anymore with the camera on it. It normally does. Oh, come to me, friend. Oh, he saw me. Didn't like it. Oh, look at the size of that. Oh my God. He's not in yet. There, he's in. I can finally breathe a little bit. Oh, look at that. Look at that.
Another technique for the wind is to find the sheltered areas in the lake, the windbreaks. The taller and denser the windbreak, the more flat water there will be behind it. In this case, I've got a wall of trees to my right. That wall of trees is breaking the wind and providing me with about 80 to 100 feet of flat water. Now, if you notice off to the left, the water is choppy, and the further you go down the lake, the heavier that chop becomes. So I'm taking advantage of this flat water to be able to fish more easily. Search out these windbreaks. Even a wall of cattails will do, but cattails, not being as tall as trees, are only going to provide maybe 10 or 15 feet of slack water. And it's all for naught if there aren't fish holding in the area that you want to fish.
Oh my. My understanding is this area has a lot of, look at that guy, he's huge. But this area has a lot of submerged trees and stumps, stuff these guys can wrap you on, and that's what happened to my biggest fish yesterday. Alright. What the hell happened to my float? It went way the hell. Oh, he's freaking out down there. Let's see if I can slide this sucker down a little. This guy is strong. All right.
In this scenario, I'm actually using the wind. I have not anchored up, and what I'm doing is I'm allowing the wind to move me down this bank while I fish a hopper. Now, the great thing about wind is it blows all manner of insects into the water, from the trees, from the cattails, from the lakeside grasses. The breakup of the surface by the wind makes it harder for overhead predators to spot their prey, and the fish seem to sense this, so they're more willing to come into the shallows and look for food. In this case, I'm using the wind to help propel me down the bank like I'm fishing a river and using the wind as current. As I move along, I'm casting close to the bank and letting my fly drift with me. Now, this only works with dry flies. If you toss a nymph or anything under an indicator, that actually kind of anchors the fly, and all you'll get is kind of this dragging action that doesn't look very natural. He's back. And I think that does it for me today. Here I'm actually trolling a fly. Now the thing you have to consider when you troll with a fly is your speed.
I'm still losing to it. Crank it one more. There we go.
Notice how I'm getting battered about by the waves. You can see by the camera how much things are being rocked up and down, side to side.
That's kind of what I don't want.
You can also see it in the cattails. They're being whipped around as well.
1, 2, and 3 on this thing are gentle speeds. But 4 and 5, there's a huge jump. Oh, wow.
Now the thing you have to take into account with wind when you're trolling, I have a motor on my boat, and when I'm headed into the wind, I have to adjust to kind of counter them. When I fish a bait fish, I want to be at around a mile an hour or so. When I'm fishing leeches, it's much slower than that, half a mile an hour or slower. Now to accomplish this, in these conditions, I've actually had to crank my motor up to full. I only have 5 speeds. I'm almost at top speed to make headway against this wind. When I turn around and I head back the other way, I may not even need to use my motor at all. I can just ride the wind down the lake.
Whitecaps with lots of bounce. They may have the right idea of fishing up there in that protected cove. Here's a fish. Yeah, I'm gonna have to stop my motor. That's off right there. Gonna lose a lot of ground. It's actually gonna bring the fish in range, really. Whoa, he's staying down. There we go. Oh. Okay. Female, about 18. Okay. Oh, and she came into the net just as the fly let go. Nice. We call that a net release. Got herself off just as she was coming into the net. Oop, oop. Find the edge, buddy. Well, because of the wind, by the time I get this fish out of the net, there she goes. By the time I get the fish out of the net, I get to fish a lot of this water all over again. All right. One more thing I'd like to talk about is limits. What are you going to set as your limit for wind? Now, I typically, whenever I go fishing on a lake, I always check the weather forecast for the town nearest the lake I'm going to fish.
And I'm checking a few things. I'm checking the temperature. That tells me how I'm going to dress. I'm checking to see if it's going to rain on me. Do I have to bring my rain gear? And, those are good points. That's something you should know. But the biggest thing in that weather forecast is what is the wind forecast to be? So I have kind of personal limits that I set, and it all depends on the size of the water that I'm fishing and how protected it is. If you're fishing a beaver pond or something small with tall trees all the way around it, then your limits for wind can be quite a bit higher because you're not in as much danger. It's usually easier to get out of those situations if you should run into a situation than it would be on a big lake. On big lakes, I am typically, depending on how big, say it's thousands of acres, then my personal limit is 30 miles an hour, and in some cases maybe just 25 miles an hour. Because believe me, you do not want to be out there in a huge chop. You have to consider things like what would happen to me if my motor quits. There are precautions that I take when I'm fishing wind, and especially heavier winds, to try and tilt the odds my way. Number one, and I've preached this all the time, is I don't see a reason why anyone should be more than about 100 feet offshore. Most of the time, even closer to that, because the shore is the area of food production in a lake. And if you're actually interested in catching feeding fish, that's where they're going to be, not out in the middle somewhere. Okay? The other thing is, if it's really windy, what I'll do is I will start my day by going into the wind. You have a choice when you get to a lake as to which way you're going to go. You can go to the right or you can go to the left. Well, for me, it depends on which way the wind is blowing. If the wind is blowing, I'm going to head into the wind. That way, if my motor fails on me, or if the wind suddenly turns really nasty and it gets scary out there, then the wind is actually helping me get back out of the lake, getting back to the takeout. Other things are how you propel your boat. That'll help you set your limits. If you're in a float tube and all you have is your swim fins, how much wind can you combat with your swim fins? And how long can you kick with everything you have with your swim fins if you have to try and get back? So, it's like pick your days, pick your limits. The one thing I will say about wind is if you fish lakes, 9 times out of 10 you're going to deal with wind. It's a very rare day when you'll have a glassy lake, just smooth as silk, no wind, and that'll hold up through the whole day. So usually what happens is in most lakes you can start out with no wind, and the thermal activity from the sun, as the sun gets high in the sky, it starts the air moving, and you can go from no wind to fairly stiff wind in a little bit of time. The more dangerous winds typically are when you have a high pressure area near a low pressure area and the wind is howling through that, and that kind of wind will last all day, if not a few days. So just something to be aware of. If you are propelling your craft with only your swim fins, you're going to have a much lower threshold than if you've got a set of oars on your boat. But even with a set of oars, it's like how much wind can you go against if you have to go into the wind and sustain that? Say the wind's blowing 35 miles an hour, you've got your oars, and you're able to make, heading into the wind, maybe 1/10 of a mile an hour against it. So if you're a mile from your put-in or takeout, that means you'd have to row at full steam for 10 hours to get back. So clearly not a smart idea. Suppose you have a motor, like I do, and it's blowing 35, and you can make, I don't know, 1/2 mile an hour against the wind at full top speed. Well, probably within about 3-4 hours at top speed, I'm going to run out of battery. So you have to take these things into consideration before you start. Things that can happen to you in the wind, especially on bigger waters, are very scary. So you need to be thinking about that all the time. You have to be thinking about the lake that you're actually fishing and what are your secondary outs. If you had to put into shore and get out of your boat because of the wind, how could you get back to your vehicle to get out of there? So, I mean, all of this stuff has to play a role. You have to think a lot more on a windy day when you're fishing lakes. So if you have any questions about anything that was discussed on this video, please leave your question in the comment field and I will get back to you. I'm instituting something new. I've gone through my old videos and realized I swear quite a bit. So I'm instituting a swear jar. So what I'm going to do is, if anybody goes through my videos, if you count the number of swears and put that in the comment field, I will pay $5 for each one to, well, a charity to be determined. And maybe we'll have a little vote about where that money should go. If you happen to like this video or what content I'm providing, please hit like. It helps the channel, it helps this video become easier to find. Also hit the subscribe button and the notification button, and that'll let you know when any new videos drop. Thank you so much. See you on the next one.